This is Closereads,
a philosophy podcast with Mark and Wes.
I'm Wes Alwan.
And I'm Mark Linsenmeyer. Let us talk about Plotinus. We've just covered Plotinus on Partially Examine Life, episode 343. You don't have to have listened to that, but I wanted us to look at the essay, The Intelligence, the Ideas, and Being, which is just a section of the Enneads, but it appears as the second essay in The Essential Plotinus, page 45, if you have that document that we will link you to. Do you have any introductory words or thoughts, or you want to just get going, Wes?
Let's just get going.
Do it.
All men from birth onward live more by sensation than by thought, forced as they are by necessity to give heed to sense impressions. Some stay in the sensate their whole life long. For them, sense is the beginning and end of everything. You're shaking your head, so
it's just those poor people who just can't.
I was worried I was doing something wrong.
Nope,
okay.
It's not you. Are you one of those sensates?
Well, we'll find out on the next episode of. All right, good and evil are the pleasures of sense and the pains of sense. It is enough to chase the one and flee the other. Those of them who philosophize say that therein wisdom lies. Like big earthy birds are they, prevented by their bulk from rising off the ground, even though they have wings. Should I read the whole thing, the whole section, since it's small?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Others do lift themselves a little above the earth. Their higher part transports them out of the pleasurable into the honorable. But unable to perceive anything higher and with nowhere to set themselves, they fall back, in virtue's name, on the activities and, quote, options of that lower realm they had thought to escape. But there is another, Should
that really be options? Or I was thinking opinions, but okay. I don't know what.
Well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But there is a third class of men godlike in the greatness of their strength and the acuity of their perceptions. They see clearly the splendors that shine out from on high. Thither, out of the mist and fogs of earth, they lift themselves. There they stay, seeing from above what is here below, taking their pleasure in truth, like a drone hovering above a continent, like a man at home, once again in his well-governed country after a far journeying.
It's a pretty standard Plato, the cave, the Phaedo, snooty against the empiricists, or our editor has put the Epicureans to as a footnote to some stay in the sunset their whole life long. Yeah, certainly what he's talking about is if you say the basis for virtue has to lie in what we are actually attracted to, and what we are attracted to is the physical pleasure and away from physical pain, then that gives you a certain kind of philosophy, which is not the Platonic one.
Yeah. There's a whole history of the Epicurean philosophy being suppressed by the ascent of Christianity and then coming back during the Renaissance and leading through Epicurean atomism to modern science, essentially. That's a tale told in The Swerve by Stephen Greenblatt. So I don't think it's an uncontroversial interpretation, although I think it's uncontroversial that there's this tension between Christianity and Platonism, the Platonist reading of Christianity, which will kind of come out of Plotinus, and then the Epicurean point of view. So, which is to say, not just that everything is reduced to the pleasure principle, if I have that right, but there's a whole materialist um, metaphysics going behind that. And similarly with the Stoics, I think you could say with their emphasis on nature and the natural, you could call that an empiricist metaphysics as well. But he associates Stoicism, and again, we are taking these associations from the footnote. But if the editor is right, he's associating Stoicism with the concept of honor, which again I think I would associate with thumos, the third part of the soul for Plato. Honor, so pleasure fails, the erotic fails, we might say, or desire, and then honor fails, and then presumably the third class of men, corresponding to the third part of the soul, would be rational, and that lines up with part of the virtue ethics tradition where rationality is important, but also habituation is important. And in the case of the Stoics, a certain kind of practice. But instead of mentioning reason, he talks about perception, which is a really interesting. So I don't quite. Yeah, maybe it's rational intuition is ultimately what he means.
They see clearly the splendors that shine out from on high.
Okay, well, that's pretty clear. Okay,
I mean,
that
it's
does
a
sound
metaphor,
like intuition
though.
of the forms. Yeah.
Yes. Whether you have to get there through rigorous argumentation, I don't know. So I don't know what Stoics he was dealing with. I normally associate Stoicism also with resort to pure reason, but there's also the question of what kind of life could you live? Well, what kind can you put up with? Would your as we read, it's okay for some people might feel just fine shoveling chamber pots, and some people would rather die than shoveling chamber pots. And reason doesn't really tell you either way which one is right. So we do need thumos to step in, but it's not like all the Stoics say, that the whole reason that you want to embrace reason or embrace only what you can control is because of honor or something like that. It's certainly not honor in the sense of status compared to others. It would be just sort of how you feel about yourself. So I think there's got to be some thumotic element driving behavior at all if you're not going to be a robot that just stands there with no reason to do anything. You need the things pulling the chariot. You need the thumos or desire, eros.
Yeah. I don't think the Stoics would say honor in the typical sense of the word would be the motivator. The typical sense being, as you mentioned, status. Right? There's nothing good in the absolute sense outside of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That includes the opinions of other people about us, and includes our, prestige. But virtue is the most important thing, and that is that involves it, who it is we are. So maybe he's associating that with honor. The guiding principle, the one thing that is good and bad, is our own character.
All right, section 2.
Okay.
Where is this country? How does one get there? If one is a born lover with an innate philosophic bent, one will get there. Such a one labors to realize beauty. Bodily beauty contents him not. To the beauty of the soul he turns his attention, to virtue, knowledge, noble deeds, law. He then goes higher still to the source of this loveliness of the soul, to what is beyond it, the uttermost limit, beauty itself, capital B. At this point and not before, all sufferings cease. But how does one start this ascent? Where does one get the needed strength? In what thought is love to find its guide? This is the guiding thought. Beauty perceived in material things is beauty borrowed. It is there as is form in matter, can pass and leave ugliness in its place. Reason tells us it is a share of beauty only. What gives a body its beauty? A twofold cause in varying degrees. Beauty, of which they partake, and the soul, by which they are what they are. So, in other words, the form and the soul by which they are what they are. We don't know what that is yet. Is the soul then of itself beautiful? No, it is not. One soul may be wise and lovely, and another one foolish and ugly. A soul's beauty is constituted by wisdom. Well, what gives the wisdom that constitutes the beauty? Is it capital T, capital I, the intelligence? It is that automatic. Is it that authentic intellect, wise without intermission, and therefore beautiful of itself? Can one be content that it is this principle, or must one look further? One must look further. One must go beyond the intelligence that, from our point of approach, stands before the supreme principle, providing the mind free access to the knowledge of all, because all that can be known is there. It is a vestibule introducing one into the presence of the good. Vestibule, yes, and vestige too, the trace in the multiple of the good, which itself remains in absolute unity.
And which is the one. All right. So it starts out, this section starts out sounding like the ladder in the symposium, where we go from more concrete versions of beauty in the empirical realm, the beauty of the body, and we use that as a stepping stone to higher forms of beauty like virtue and knowledge. But ultimately we get to what Plato called in the symposium an ocean of beauty. We just get to look out on beauty itself, which apparently is just this big, vast sea, watery expanse. And which also sounds kind of sublime and scary, but so, and then I think we get just kind of grafting as usual of an Aristotelian idea onto the Platonic idea, which is that the soul has something to do with it in the sense that it makes, right? We get the hylomorphism with the form and the matter, and then the soul makes the thing what it is. So now we get this interesting connection where beauty, the Platonic explanation has something to do with imitation, as if beautiful things are partaking of the form. The Aristotelian explanation is dynamic, and involves a soul in the sense of a dynamic, immanent form. So what do we gain by that? It's not that the soul gives everything, not all souls are beautiful, but
let's remind people what hylomorphism is. So hyle is matter, right?
Yeah. Did I not say form and matter? Yeah.
Just that. So it is the instantiation. So there's a weird, that what makes the person.
No, morphe is form and
right.
hyle.
So
okay, maybe you just said that. Yeah.
The soul
Hule
is the form.
Hule is matter.
Okay. Right. Okay. Spelled hyle. Yes. Hule. The form goes into the matter and makes the person. But here it seems like the beauty goes into the form. It goes into the soul. So the soul can, even though the soul is a form, it seems like he's saying here that a form itself can participate, can be molded, can engage in something like the form matter relation by acting as the matter for beauty. Is that right? That there's a hierarchy of
maybe
waveforms fit together here?
All right. I'm looking at the bottom of page 47, PDF page 49. So okay. So the question is, how do we start the ascent? And what's going to be our guide? So this is a guiding thought. In a way, it's a principle. It's a thing that can help us make the ascent. And that is beauty perceived in material things. There as is form in matter. So beauty becomes a formal principle that organizes matter. We can find beauty in ordinary material things. I suppose human bodies and artifacts primarily, right? Or organic bodies, plants and flowers and trees as well. But
so this has to be a Aristotelian or a Platonic way because of combining the two, because Aristotle, I thought, was very insistent on there can actually be only one form per organism. That
Yeah,
just because
it
it has a
sounds like
property doesn't mean it
yeah.
has a form. So the fact that it is a person or a human body, that is its form. You cannot have another form, beauty, come and knock on the door and say, I want to, partly determine you, add some extra organization to what's going on. But Plato has no problem with that. And as we discussed in the Partially Examined Life episode, even all the organs within bodies have separate forms. Just anything that would be sort of a regulative principle that would say this is an organized something and not just a heap. So you can have the same object be organized in quite a few ways, and objects within objects within objects that are also have organizations like that.
Yeah, I mean there's an interesting structure here because he'll say beauty. What gives a body its beauty? Well, it directly partakes in beauty, and I think that's in the physical sense. You can look at the physicality of a body and say,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, it's a nice body," and via the soul, right? So you can like someone's body, and you can like their personality. Good body, bad personality. Bad body, good personality. There's lots of different things do it for different people. But anyway, but what's interesting here is that there's this direct participation in the beauty, and then there's beauty via the soul, which is not guaranteed because not all souls are beautiful. So it's this weird. So this is why I talked about the grafting on of Aristotle. It's this. He's giving this more complicated structure. Platonic beauty, participation in Platonic beauty, and then something that the soul does when it makes things what they are. The soul's beauty is constituted by wisdom. So why is this a guide? That's the question. So we go from seeing material, the beauty of material things, and the thing what we want to get to, well, we want to go higher, but a stepping stone is seeing the soul's beauty as constituted by wisdom. I haven't given a lot of thought to that, even in Plato's Symposium. What is it that is that really the case? We go from appreciating beautiful bodies to appreciating beautiful souls?
So I thought, at least I remember most clearly because we read most recently the German romantics who had a sort of Neoplatonism wherein the beauty of a body actually is determined by the beauty of the soul. That is how it just manifests itself. It's seen from the outside. The soul is just the same thing as the body seen from the inside. So it would not be the case that, as came up in the Partially Examined Life episode, Socrates is ugly physically, but yet he has a beautiful soul, so we can overlook or perhaps see him through different eyes, so that what is objectively ugly we actually take as beautiful because we see maybe the light in his eyes, the gentleness of his countenance, things like that would thereby introduce us to his beauty, even if he doesn't have the right shaped nose.
The other thing I was thinking about, well, now that you bring up the German romantics, for the German romantics, our ability to grasp the absolute, which is very similar to Plotinus's idea of getting to the one, is through the aesthetic. So our experience of aesthetic objects is our way of getting to the one, and they kind of poo-pooed the more traditional Platonic rational notion, right? The aesthetic is kind of the back door when everything else has failed. Which is
we're
not
seeing why. I think we're seeing who they read and where they saw that idea from.
Well, yeah, but the Platonic idea is we do it through reason. So, what gives the wisdom that constitutes the beauty? Is it the intelligence? And the intelligence, remember, is this Platonic realm of Platonic forms that has been made.
Well, that's what we're about to get to. So why don't we
more dynamic in the Aristotelian sense, and it's kind of kind of integrates the unmoved mover a little bit, but and then he says you got to go beyond the intelligence to the good. So you go, right. So you go beyond the forms all the way up to the big men, the good. What is it in video games? You get to the boss. What's the final person you fight?
It's just the final boss. Yeah.
The final boss. Gotta go all the way up the ladder.
Yeah. Why don't you take us into to number 3 there, where we're going to see in his words what the intelligence is here.
We must inquire more closely into the nature of the intelligence. It is not unreasonable to identify it simply with authentic essence and existence. Ours, however, must be a more circuitous route. We must decide whether it really exists. There is something ridiculous, surely, about questioning the existence of the intelligence, but there are people who do it. Just to remind listeners, the intelligence is capitalized. So let us inquire whether it really is, as we say, whether it is, quote unquote, separate. The footnote says choristos, Aristotle's technical expression, whether it is separate. All right, so Aristotle's technical expression as in ontologically independent, and there are various other meanings. So you see our Aristotle metaphysics episode for PEL. All right, whether it is separate, whether it is identical with existence, and whether it is
with
the
existence
seat,
with a TS, individual existence.
Yep.
Yeah.
And whether it is the seat of the ideas. We shall do this right now. Clearly, everything we call being is composite, whether man made it or nature. The man-made, with its metal or stone or wood, is not achieved until skill, by the induction of a form, has turned into the statue or house or bed. The natural, however, is even more complicated. I mean what we call a compound, sort of thing that can be analyzed into constituent elements and form as man, for example, in the soul and body, and the human body into the 4 elements. Now, finding everything to be made up of materials and a shaping form, of itself the matter of the elements is formless, one naturally asks whence comes the shaping form, and one has questions of a similar sort about the soul. Is it partless? Is it, on the contrary, composite? Has it something representing matter and something else representing form? Is the intelligence within it the equivalent of the shape of the statue, and the sculptor giving it shape? Adopting the same method in regard to the cosmos, one will once more end up with an intelligence and think it the true maker and the demiurge. The matter then is fire, water, earth, and air. Formation comes from yet another being, the soul, all caps. The soul it is that gives them their cosmic pattern, but the intelligence provides them the seminal reasons, right? So seminal is associated with matter. The seminal reasons, much as skill gives the soul of the artist norms of performance. For there is an intelligence that is the form of the soul, and there is the intelligible that gives the form to the soul, like the sculptor who gives shape to the statue, still possessing the while all that is still possessing the while or the whole, all that is given. What it gives to the soul is neighbor to the true real. What body receives is image and imitation.
There is the intelligence that gives the form to the soul, like the sculptor who gives shape to the statue, still possessing all the while all that is given. I think it is the while.
It's just all the while, not just the while. Okay.
But, well, can you just have part of the while?
Well, it doesn't say all the while.
No, it doesn't.
Right. So that's the typo.
As a way as a way to understand what the while means.
Yeah.
So maybe I was wrong before in saying that the soul is in fact the form of the body for Plotinus, because that might be what it is for Aristotle, but there's nothing about the soul specifically that makes the body have the organs that it does, operating in the ways that it does. The soul is not so complex that it, has the entire digestive and circulatory system and everything else in it. There are separate forms for those things.
I mean, for in Dianima, the soul is composite, and it does involve, right, digestion, generation, and growth, and plants have a soul, for instance, and that's really their only part to their soul is the metabolic.
I'm unclear,
but we should distinguish. Sorry, we should distinguish the soul, all caps, from the soul, little soul, which would be the
Yeah,
thing that belongs to.
our
It's
individual
this.
souls.
Yeah, it's the cosmos which has the soul.
Yes. So the soul, I think, is. I mean, we can ask like, what does that actually add? Uh, I mean, that's what he's going to ask in number 4 here. So we shouldn't dwell on it here. But we've got the intelligence that is the seed of the forms, and it seems like that should be enough. That the intelligence is basically like the personal God, and it gives form to everything beneath it in the ontological chain. And you shouldn't need then the soul as the material, Mother Nature as something underneath that. So we'll see why he thinks we need that. But in any case, it's not clear that then the individual soul again has to serve all those functions that you were saying that Aristotle says it does in De Anima. If you think that the soul has to be something materially in the person and it organizes us biologically, then sure, the soul would have to be really complicated in that way. But I think that he has a more Platonic notion of the soul, where the soul is the thing that was pretty much intact and pure before it even got involved with matter. And so,
I think he might be just combining the two. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not clear. Like, does the soul, if I had a different soul, well, this would support the idea that the beauty of the body could be affected by the beauty of the soul. So let's say you have a person, the one and the same person who's kind of a rude, obnoxious person, and then goes through a series of challenges and travails, and ghosts visit him, and he becomes morally much better. Would then that improve his digestion, his physical appearance, I mean, if you believe
where
that
did you get the idea the body would look more beautiful if the soul is beautiful?
I mean, that was again from the German Romantics.
Oh,
presumably getting that somewhere out of their weird version of Platonism. Right? If you think that I mean, it's not necessarily the case that just improving the soul morally would therefore include everything about the soul. Maybe the soul, has its vegetative part, and how moral you are has nothing to do with its vegetative functions. We just haven't seen in here yet, and I don't think we will, whether the individual soul, what its job actually is.
Yeah.
Maybe we can't know.
I just think he's mixing everything up in a big pot, and but with Aristotle and Plato. But okay, so the intelligence provides the seminal reasons, which I take to be the forms, right?
Yes. So
but we should
just
say,
to remind folks that Aristotle's weird version of childbirth is the semen, the seminal reasons, provides the form, the womb provides the matter. So the entire DNA is from the father.
Yeah, I misspoke. I said the seminal reasons are associated with the matter. I meant the form. So, and the female provides the matter. But the in this case, yes, the forms are like the semen, and this is important because the way Aristotle thinks of generation is that there's form transfer, and the form is not created or destroyed. So in the case of art, it's in the mind of the creator, and then it gets transferred into matter. In the case of generation, natural birth, it's there beforehand in the parent, and then it gets put into the offspring. In this case, we get this analogy, either parent, offspring, or artist, art object analogy with the intelligence and the forms. The forms are put, provides them. What is so it's the cosmos, right? Formation, the soul is it that gives the cosmic pattern. The intelligence provides them. What is them? I guess the matter, fire, water, earth, and air. Yeah. So the intelligence, puts into matter, which is the elements, the forms, in the same way that skill gives the soul, the artist, the norms of performance. So it's like the way it's really an interesting explanation because it gets a little bit at Platonic participation, right? It's kind of an origin story for Platonic participation. The world has been matter has been fashioned according to the forms.
And these intermediate entities, like the individual soul, their idea is to actually do, the world soul does things, but it's really passing on, like it has the skill, the forms from the intelligence. So maybe the what the individual soul does to the individual body might be influenced by their quality of as a vessel, that if you are really obsessed with stupid material things, then you're not going to pass on the forms from the intelligence, from the world soul through yourself to your own body and your own actions, your own creations, right? You're not going to be creating beautiful works of art and virtuous actions at the very least.
Yeah. I'm still sorry, I'm still distracted by trying to get this whole picture. So the soul is like, it's on analogy. That's the soul of the cosmos on analogy to the soul of a particular body. The intelligence gives form to the soul. Right. So it is like on analogy to a parent and offspring. It's like the intelligence gives the DNA, the DNA to the cosmic soul, which is the Platonic forms.
Well, let's read the short section 4. Why must be go beyond the soul? Why not make it the supreme? So the soul, the world soul. Why not make it the supreme in itself? First of all, the intelligence is different from the soul and is prior. There is no truth in the belief that the soul begets the intelligence. How could potentiality become actuality unless cause brought it about? Could chance affect it? Then it might never become actuality. What has to be admitted is that the primal beings are in act, sufficient unto themselves, and perfect. Those that are sequent to them are imperfect and receive what, as opposed to subsequent, sequent to them are imperfect and receive what perfection they have from their begetters, as children, imperfect when born, are brought to adulthood by their parents. Produced is to producing principle, as matter is to form, and it is brought to perfection by its informing principle. If further, the soul is thus changeable, while there must be somehow something unchangeable, else time would wear all away, this something must be prior to the soul. Again, there must be something prior to the soul, since the soul is in the world. There has to be something outside a world that all body and matter has nothing enduring about it. Were there not, neither mankind nor the seminal reasons would know either survival or identity. Arguments such as these make it clear that the intelligence must be prior to the soul.
So we need the soul, and it sounds very Aristotelian here. We need something dynamic that is immanent, in this case, in the cosmos. But that's to say that it also changes, right? It's the cosmos is a realm of becoming, and the soul reflects that. And the argument seems to be that we need something unchanging outside of that immanence. So again, you get this combination of Aristotle, of course, had it too, and made the same argument. Right? We need an unmoved mover. We do need something static. Just because Aristotle didn't like the forms doesn't mean he's going to get rid of the idea of an unchanging principle altogether, which is the unmoved mover or the good it's going to turn out to be, or his version of the good. So the soul begets the intelligence. It's not that the soul begets the intelligence. The intelligence. The intelligence produces the soul. We get an unchanging principle that produces an immanent, changeable form in the cosmos.
Yes, if you were Hegel, maybe you would think that the system of nature develops over time a consciousness of itself and intelligence. So basically, God grows as a product of the natural world. But no, that is not the creationist view here.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, this idea. I mean, who's he responding to with this preemptive strike on Hegel? The idea that the intelligence might come out of the soul. I guess that's kind of a materialistic, naturalistic position. Um, right?
Yeah, where else could it come from? I mean, it has to
You know, if you were a
bootstrap somehow.
Stoic or an Epicurean, you had more of a naturalistic frame. You'd be like, might say, yeah, of course, there's no external Platonic realm. It's all emergent on matter. Uh, but has to be admitted that primal beings are themselves perfect. So he gives a very Aristotelian argument about potentiality and actuality, and I think it is made by Aristotle in the Unmoved Mover section, which is, um, what must be prior? Actuality must be prior, and um, if the world might never have come, there's a sense in which the world has to be necessary. But if there's anything material, if the matter is the first principle, then the world, this is the reference to chance. Could chance affect it? Then it might never have come about. It would just be potentiality. That's not the greatest explanation of that argument, but um, that's the sketch.
How could potentiality become actuality unless cause brought it about? So somehow the unmoved mover has to, move things. It has to be a causal agent, uh, which I thought we'd want to say, but it is, the intelligence by having the forms, it has all that potentiality because what are the forms but potentiality to become a material thing? This is the way we were describing it in the Partially Examined Life episode, and why the one and the intelligence and the soul would feel the need to actually cash itself out as body because there is all this potential that's in the higher level that somehow needed to be unleashed. But it seems like from here we have to modify that to say, well, the potential is all in the world soul. It's not in the intelligence. The intelligence is the forms are actual because the intelligence does not change. So there can't be any sense of potential in that.
Yeah, and if things did start with potentiality, right, then the question is why something, not nothing. If the world is to be, this is again the Aristotelian argument, it must necessarily be so. It must have flowed from a prior actuality. If it's just potentiality, and why did actuality emerge out of that? By chance? That's why he says, could chance affect it? It's a repetition of the Aristotelian argument. So we need, if the universe is to exist at all, or at least, necessarily exist, actuality must have been prior. And that's another explanation for the intelligence, right? We don't want to just sort of start with the soul, which belongs to the realm of potentiality in the sense that it's changing. We need something static above it. So,
All right, you want to read 5?
if words are going to mean anything, the intelligence, in quotes this time, must be understood not as intelligence in potency or intelligence evolving, which would in any case require another and prior intelligence, but as intelligence in actuality and for all eternity. It does not acquire thoughts. It has thoughts of itself. So this is, again, why I was saying there's an analogy to the unmoved mover. It thinks of itself, and by itself, it is its thoughts. Were its thoughts a reality other than itself, its own reality would not be the object of its thinking, and it would be in potency and not in act. We should not separate these realities from one another, even though we are so inclined in thinking to do so. What then is this that is both the knower and the known? It is without doubt authentically the intelligence. It thinks beings, and they are. It is these beings, for it will perceive them either as being somewhere else or as in itself and as itself. The somewhere else is out of the question. This is, again, recapitulation of Aristotle. The unmoved mover has to be thinking itself. It can't be dependent on external objects that it thinks. Where could it be? So they are itself and the content of itself. They are not things of sense, although that has been suggested. Who suggested that? Those stupid
The
Stoics.
Stoics.
Damn Stoics. Since sense existence is primal in no being, form inherent in things of sense is imitation of authentic form. Every form that is in anything has come from another form and is its imitation. What is more, if the intelligence is, quote unquote, maker of this all, it cannot think these things in order to produce them in this cosmos, for the cosmos would not yet exist. Such beings must exist before the cosmos, must not be typical of other beings, and must themselves be archetypal. They are the very essence of the intelligence. The suggestion might be made that the seminal reasons would suffice here, but then they must be eternal. If eternal, if immune to change, and they must exist in the intelligence, such as we have described it, a principle prior to condition, to nature, to soul, for they are all contingent existence. Let's stop there.
Yeah. So we were saying that the seminal reasons, just the word reasons makes it sound like it's not a material thing. But if we think that no, there are tokens of forms, there are blueprints, there is the DNA that is stamped in this case, the sperm, then yes, this too, he's saying, because it is material and individual, it has to be a copy of something that is unified and eternal.
Okay, where are you reading that? I was still taking seminal reasons to be Platonic forms, but
if eternal, if immune to change, they must exist in the intelligence. Principle prior to condition to soul, for they are contingent existence. So the seminal reasons are contingent existence. Or wait, nature and soul are contingent existence.
Yeah.
Condition. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So we need the seminal. So I don't know what he means. This might be the seminal reasons would suffice. That is, we don't need soul. Is that the suggestion? But then they must be eternal, the seminal reasons.
We wouldn't need the intelligence. Yes. So yeah, if you see seminal reasons as the carriers of the blueprints, as I was just saying, actual semen, then it certainly can't be the intelligence. But if you want to say, oh yeah, those are the forms, okay, then just understand what you're saying. You're saying that the forms are eternal. You're saying that whatever is stamped in semen is eternal.
Yeah. They must exist in the intelligence. In other words, they must be in the Platonic realm. So this is kind of an anti-Aristotelian argument here.
Yeah.
Right? So then they can't just be immanent in nature. We need this separate realm if they are to be eternal. For Aristotle, it was just enough that they are eternal in a sense of, well, rabbit. Where is the rabbit form before the baby rabbit occur? Well, it's in the adult, and yeah, all the specific rabbits are in the realm of becoming. But they're carrying the torch, so to speak. The form is eternal, but it's still carried by individual particulars, and Aristotle doesn't like the Platonic forms. Here, Plotinus is saying we can't really make sense of their eternalness and their unchangingness unless we put them in this separate realm. Okay, and then all that stuff above about knower and known. So the intelligence is also the unmoved mover. So the unmoved mover is kind of packed with the forms. The forms are inside the unmoved mover.
Right.
And that's
so
part of what it's thinking. These are the entities that it's thinking. It's not dependent on contingent material things. That's not what it primarily thinks. It thinks these beings, and they are these beings being the forms. Go ahead.
So I thought in Aristotle, right, that the function of the unmoved mover in the movement it imparts was very much global and toward the good, generally speaking. And I think that is something that the one has taken over in this system. That
Well, Aristotle's, yeah.
the intelligence in producing all these various, in being all this collection of various forms, is somehow expressing somehow what can't literally be in the one, because the one itself has no properties, but it is yeah, I guess we haven't really gotten into what the exact relation of the intelligence to the
Yeah.
one is, but it seems like
This is a really,
yeah.
this is a really good point you're making, because it's kind of some of the job that the unmoved mover does in Aristotle is kind of getting divided between these two entities, the one and the
Yep.
intelligence, where the one is so abstract and but is identified with the good, but it's not even an entity; it's beyond being. Aristotle has this really cool explanation of how the unmoved mover just is what we would call the one or the good. And his explanation is that, look, the unmoved mover is also thought thinking itself. It's pure contemplation, and contemplation is the best state you can be in. It's the best thing ever. So the reason why everything moves according, kind of revolves around the unmoved mover, the unmoved mover doesn't have to do anything, is because they're like, look at the unmoved mover. It's in the greatest state there is. We want to be that way.
Yep.
And that's why the world moves. So Aristotle has this ingenious explanation of how the unmoved mover can be the good. Plotinus is going to make the good transcendent even of this unmoved mover, which becomes the intelligence which carries the forms.
Yeah, we're
Cool.
still
Really
ultimately
cool.
looking toward the one when we raise our eyes from the most beautiful beauties that we can conceive of to the thing that is so beautiful that it transcends beauty itself.
It doesn't exist. There's none more black. Do you remember that from Spinal Tap?
Of course.
The Black Album. There's none more black. Or it goes to 11. That's another. I
The
think that's
one goes
another
to
the
11.
one reference, right? It's off the scale. It's off the charts.
Let me read the second half of 5 here.
All right.
The intelligence, accordingly, is itself the authentic existence. It is not a knower that knows them as somewhere else. They are not prior to it. They are not after it. Of being, it is rather the lawgiver, or better still, the law. Thus, it is true to say that, quote, to be and to think are the same thing. And, quote, in beings that involve no matter, thinker and thought are identical. And, quote, I sought myself as a being. The theory of reminiscence bears on this as well.
All right. Can we just stop there for a second?
Yeah.
So now we get this other cool, right? Thought thinking itself kind of applies to every form in a way, right? Thinker and thought are identical in anything that involves no matter. So every Platonic form is a thought thinking itself. And why does he think that transfers to recollection, to Platonic recollection? How does that bear out that idea?
I sought myself as being I mean, I guess this is just what we were saying in the Partially Examined Life episode, that if you, in meditating, you're seeking yourself as being, you're focusing just on thoughts, and I guess only the higher thoughts, not the evil, scummy thoughts that are about material things, but the thoughts of beauty, of the abstractions, of abstract entities, of thinkings, thoughts of thoughts, then you'll see actually that is the intelligence that is doing the thinking. Insofar as you are transcending your individuality, you are remembering what it was like when you were, before you were embodied, before your soul descended, when your soul was one with the one, with not with the one, well, with the soul, mother, with the world soul, at the very least.
Yeah, these recollected forms are kind of ancestors to like Kantian categories, right? So they are the a priori, such that when we encounter something in the empirical world, we're not taking in the form from outside. We have it already within us. And in Plato's case, we just recollect it. And that's supposed to bear out the idea that each category or form is thought thinking itself. So, yeah, maybe the idea is that it's not a thought that comes from the outside. And therefore, I don't know, its existence is not predicated on an encounter with a material object. Its existence is just prior, a priori, and it must be self-generating in some sense. But all right, go ahead.
None of these beings is off in space, outside the intelligence. They all subsist in themselves without end, undergoing no change or decay. It is for this reason that they are real. Things that come and go have only borrowed being. Not they, but they on whom they draw are real. Only by such borrowing are sense objects the things that we say they are, their substrate having received formation from elsewhere, as bronze from the sculptor's skill, or wood from the carpenter's. The skill penetrates them with form, and yet remains integrally apart from them, continuing to carry within it the reality of statue or bed. So it is with all corporeal things. This cosmos of ours, characteristically a participant in images itself, shows how copies differ from authentic beings. Against the variability of the first, there is the unchanging quality of the second, reposing in themselves, not needing space, because not having magnitude, possessing an existence intellective and self-sufficing. Bodies seek their sufficiency in others than their own kind. The intelligence, sustaining by its wondrous power all that would of themselves fail, seeks no stay anywhere.
Yeah, so we had still on this track of complete ontological independence in the sense of being self-generating via thought thinking itself. And then it penetrates. Wow. Its skill penetrates them with form. Does the intelligence get consent? Sorry.
It doesn't need consent. There's nothing to consent. It has all the intelligence. There's no agency on the part of the dumb matter.
Right.
You don't need to get consent from a tree if you want to have sex with a tree.
Yeah.
There's a tip to leave you with. Yeah, this is all pretty
so
standard.
A tip, so to speak. Right,
standard Platonic metaphysics.
With I mean, I have a hybrid in my notes, or scratched onto the page itself. I have hybrid of Platonic and Aristotelian form.
I just didn't think that in Aristotle there's any sense of, well, is there that the unmoved mover and the whatever the higher levels are, they have all the reality there, and that the material things that are cashed out, like that doesn't.
Yeah,
I think
no,
for Aristotle that would make no
just,
sense.
He's grafting again Plato onto Aristotle, and yeah, all the stuff about the unmoved mover essentially being the realm of the forms. I mean, yeah, it's innovative. It's an innovative combination of the two, I think.
Well, I think this is a good place to stop. We can talk offline whether we feel like this is enough to show off to folks, whether we got enough of the difficulty of these ontological elements, the world soul and the intelligence, or whether we should keep going.
We only have 5 pages left in this essay. I think we should do it. But.
All right. Well, we could do a part 2. In any case, it will likely not be available to the wider public. So, patreon.com/ Closereads Philosophy, if you want to get everything that we ever do. And thanks for hanging out.
Thank you.